I'm so glad all of you could join us today. If you were with us last week we had a national webinar that went through the entire Game Changers kit this year. This year, NYSD is called Game Changers, and it's once again focused on computer science. Today, we will be talking a bit about the entire kit and some of the activities, but we're really going to focus on the plugged version of activity within the kit called Pitch Your Passion. And we're going to dive into CS First and Scratch to give you some tips and tricks on how to use this with youth. Okay, so just a few things as we get started here. There will be some times for questions, but we'll probably, rather than chatting it out throughout the discussion, we'll open it up for questions as we move along. If you have a question that you're afraid you're going to forget, please throw it into the chat box, and we will open up the chat box at the very end of the presentation to answer all of those questions too. So we want to make sure we answer as many of those questions as possible as we go through today's webinar, but we didn't want to break up the flow, so we'll have pauses throughout to answer questions as we go along. All right, so I'm Jen Robertson Honecker, and I am the State STEM Specialist for West Virginia University. And I, along with Joshua, who will introduce himself in just a second, created this year's National Youth Science Day kit, or at least we were the land grant that created this year's kit, Game Changers. And we did so along with Google and National 4-H. Joshua?
Yeah, so I'm Joshua, and I'm a computer science instructor for WVU 4-H. And so we'll go ahead and get started talk with the rest of the webinar. So the first thing we want to talk about is just a general overview of Game Changers for those of you who didn't attend the overview webinar. It's great for first-time coders. The age is for 8 to 14, but that's really just a suggestion. There's some of these activities that you can do with younger audiences and some you can do with older. The kit has 3 total activities. 2 of them are unplugged. They're called Hack Your Harvest and Program Your Playground. And then the one we'll be talking about today is the plugged activity, which is done with a computer or tablet. Each of the activities makes a connection between one of the CS pillars, so that's something new for this year. The online activity that we're talking about today, its pillar alignment is civic engagement. You can see the time chart over here on the side. This is really versatile, and you can do it with any setup, any amount of time.
Do you want to just really briefly mention Hack Your Harvest and Program Your Playground?
Sure. So Hack Your Harvest is an activity where it's a game board, and students use this game board, and it's a very tabletop, gamey feel. But they actually learn coding and CS concepts as they're doing it, and they actually use a programming language that we've made for the game board to get a tractor from one end to the other. And then the other activity, Program Your Playground. Students learn about the software design process as they create their own playground games. So they learn about things like user testing and revision as they go back and forth and create these various versions of tag, and then eventually just their own playground game. So Pitch Your Passion is the computer-based activity in this year's kit. The computational thinking alignments are decomposition and algorithm design. And like I've already said, the pillar engagement is civic engagement. So the way this is a 2-part activity, but the second part is optional. In the first part, kids get to animate a passion using an online platform called Scratch, which we'll be talking about later. But the passion can be, absurd or profound. It's whatever the kids are passionate about. It can be why dragons should rule the world, or it can be why we should recycle more. It's really up to them in this one, just as long as they're animating something they are concerned about. And then the second part is a public service announcement. So with that part, kids will actually do research about a real-life cause, and then they'll create a PSA, a more traditional public service announcement, to tell people why they should care about that particular cause. So no computer science or coding experience is needed for this, either as a facilitator or as someone participating. If you're doing the activity with internet access, there will be videos that will step kids through each task. And we'll see those videos later on in today's presentation. But if you're doing it without internet access, kids do the activity using what are called code cards. And they're these, bigger than an index card, and they show you step by step exactly what you need to do as you go through it. And these are also great for kids that have different learning styles. So for some kids, the videos are just too much, and so these can be a great way, even if you are doing it online, to engage some kids. So we've already said that the activity can be done with or without internet. If you're going to do it without internet, you use these scratch cards, and you will need to pre-download Scratch onto your computer. We include versions of Scratch for both Mac and Windows on the flash drive. That is the caveat, though. You will need a Windows or Mac device if you're going to do it without internet access. With internet access, you can do it on tablets, phones, pretty much anything. But if you're doing it offline, you will need a Windows or Mac device.
And there are only really two devices that we've found that you cannot do the offline version of Scratch, and those are iPads. There is no app right now that allows you for offline use, although you can do it online, and the same for Chromebooks. You cannot download it offline on most Chromebooks, but you can do it online for all Chromebooks that I've used thus far. So other than that, offline use, we haven't found any issues with any PC or Mac.
Right. I would imagine that Android phones and tablets, you can't do it on those either.
For the offline.
Yeah.
But definitely for online.
Right. So we have here some example projects, and I will go ahead and show those to you. So this is an example of the first project. Just give it a second to load here. So you can see the sprites are having a conversation about hiking. And then here's an option for user response. So I will go ahead and put in yes. And then the bear tells me, bring my friends next time. There's sounds. Also, these sprites do various things. So if I click on the bear, the background will change. If I click on the bee has something to say. A little dance that goes on here. Some sound. And so this is that is meant to be a full version of what the activity can look like if the kids go through all the add-on activities. So each thing you saw there was an add-on that the kids would be able to do. And so if they go through all the videos, that's what their project could look like.
And I'll just also mention that this exact project that Google has put together as an example project is the one that is stepped through on the scratch cards. So you'll actually see those same pictures with the bear and the bee on the scratch cards that are included in the kit.
And here is the second. This would be the second activity. This is the optional public service announcement. And there are worksheets in the youth workbook that help kids do the research portion of this.
What I think is really great about this project, I do a lot of work with middle schoolers, and I could see them really getting into a lot of neat topics here that they're passionate about. And it really follows along with in 4-H, we have our public speaking and we have our poster contests. And I think this is really a great way to do the same thing within coding. And so it really gives the kids an opportunity to voice something that they're concerned about and put a lot of creative artistic thinking behind their announcement.
And if you notice, the characters were saying facts as they were going, and so it steps them through keeping a factual presentation, but making it more entertaining. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Jen, and she'll be walking us through using the CS First platform and how to code within Scratch.
All right, so what we've looked at so far is we took a really brief look at the kit itself, and I will also go into that in a little more detail later on and what's entailed in the kit. And we looked at the Pitch Your Passion activity. And again, this year, if you did Code Your World last year, the online plugged activity is very similar to what we did with Animate a Name. We just took it one step further. So with the first part of that first example project that we looked at within Pitch Your Passion, again, the kids are just doing something they're passionate about. It could be silly, it can be fun, it can be serious. And I would do this with kids as young as 4th, maybe even 3rd grade. It's all about reading comprehension is usually where I start to decide my younger side of this. And I think they can have a lot of fun telling stories with that project. With a second activity, getting a little bit more serious, really thinking about what is a public service announcement and the research that goes into this. You could do it with younger audiences, but I think our middle schoolers and up will really have a lot of fun with that and really get a lot out of it. So that's sort of our second component. That's an add-on from last year, that let's take it one step further. But for many of you, maybe you didn't do Code Your World last year, or you did, but you didn't jump into Animate a Name because it made you feel a little nervous. So here we really want to dive into what is CS First and Scratch, and how do we use it as facilitators, some tips on how to do so, so that you feel really comfortable. Because I think once you do this with kids, you're going to see how easy it is, how fun it is, and you're going to take that next step. Because I've done it now with probably 300 kids or more, and I am not a coder, and I just watching the kids have fun with it was what motivated me to keep going. Now, so we're going to look into how this all works, and we're going to step into actually last year's activity, Animate a Name, because Pitch Your Passion hasn't gone live yet, but it will in the next couple weeks. However, you can start practicing today with Animate a Name and some of the other things within CS First, and I hope you do so. It's really fun. So first of all, why do we want to do this, and what are the kids going to get out of it? So again, no computer science experience at all is necessary for the youth or for the facilitator. So as we're going to see in a second, the kids are going to be following step-by-step instructional videos that introduce them to these fundamental computer science concepts. If you are doing it offline, you're going to have a set of those 17 scratch cards in your kit, and there's also printable scratch cards. You can make additional copies available in the USB that comes within the kit. The kids are going to build computer programs using Scratch, and every different program is going to be unique. And that's really important because we think that youth choice, youth voice is important. So the kids are all going to be doing something different. They're going to be developing a debugging mindset to solve real problems in real time. We do a lot of teamwork and peer learning, and this is what makes it great for someone like myself who isn't an experienced coder. If I see kids have trouble on one part, and even watching the video didn't help much, and there's always another youth in the room who did something, who conquered that issue, and I'm like, hey, how about you help this person get through that same problem? And it works every time. And they're also going to learn independent problem solving by working through these projects at their own pace. I think what's really great about this program is that every kid can find success. Some kids may only get through 1 or 2 videos on their project, and others might get through every single one of them. But again, it's their unique project that they're working on, so everyone feels like they've accomplished something by the end of the day. Okay, what about for us, the teachers or facilitators? So for us, we're going to introduce and facilitate the activities using this platform with those videos, which allows us to offer one-on-one support as needed. So I'm really, you've heard it many times, the guide on the side, not the sage on the stage. I'm walking around, I'm seeing where there are issues, answering questions as necessary, and helping out. So even in a classroom, I think the biggest I've ever done this with is about 30 or 30 plus kids. It still felt personal because I could give one-on-one help as necessary. So we circulate facilitating sharings. I like to ask a lot of questions. Hey, what are you doing there? How did you do that? That looks really fun. Can you tell me about your project? And also offering times for reflection. Well, how did you, what kind of problems did you face? How did you fix them as you went through? It's also helping us develop confidence in introductory computer science concepts. Again, I'm a chemist, this is not my field, but I now feel more confident going on, and I certainly feel confident being able to share computer science with kids, even though it's not something that I'm an expert in. So we're gonna go ahead and jump into CS first. All right, so I've gone ahead and brought up the website here. And when you first come in, there's a lot, they've just redone the dashboard for everyone. And it's very visual, and you'll see a lot of different things in here, some introductory topics. But right now, I'm gonna go in as if I were a youth. Because I've already set up a classroom, and I'm gonna sign in just as one of my kids would when I'm doing this in a classroom or a library. So the first thing that kids are going to do is sign in, and of course they're going to be a student. And ahead of time, you would have set up a class code, and I will show you how to do that. But my class code that I've created ahead of time, and it's always a funky bunch of letters or numbers. Let me check my work. Yes, I did that right. And hit next. And this is great. You always want to give your classroom a name that is what you're doing. So the kids, when the kids see this name, they're like, oh yeah, that's us. So I do a lot of work in the schools. So I'll even title it, Mountaineer Middle, November 13th. And so when the kids see that, they're like, oh yeah, that's us. That's where we are. So we're going to join. And when they go through this way, they're going to click yes, because we're going to create a unique username and password. Now, I want to stop here for a second to say that you do not have to use this pathway for kids to participate in Pitch Your Passion or Animate a Name. We could have just gone up here and clicked try the activities on your own, and the kids could jump straight in and start creating things. The only thing about going through this pathway that I'm showing you now is that through a unique username and password, the kids are saving their work that they can go back to later. Now, many of you are probably like me, and that I'm all over the place. I usually see these kids just once, and I'm off and about to the next thing. But I want to have a way for them to continue learning when I'm not around. And since I'm doing it in schools, a lot of times they'll continue in the classroom with the teacher. So I like to provide this pathway so I know even if they want to, they have got that opportunity. So we're going to click yes. And this is the unique username and password. Now, this is going to be really important that the kids write this down. And I love the fact in this new dashboard, they've even made them click something before they're able to go on. You'll see, and I'll show you later today as we get to it, there is a place for them to write down their username and password within the student youth workbook. And so I think it's going to be great to include that for them this year. And if not, at least have some pieces of paper to do so, so that they can write this down. I'll also show you how going through this way is good for you to keep track of how many youth you've worked with. So we're going to click sign in next. And I've already set up the class here, so we're going to go ahead and click on Animate a Name, which is going to jump us right in here. Now, the great thing about these activities, they have both the English speaking and Spanish speaking version. So if you work with a lot of Spanish speakers, you have that option too. So as you can see up here, I'm already signed in to the platform, but I will need that username and password here in a little bit, as well as if I ever want to go back into the system later. So let's go ahead and watch the introductory video from last year's National Youth Science Day activity, Animate a Name, just to give you an idea about how these videos work.
Hi, my name is Olga and I work in Google's Computer Science Education Department. And I'm Fiona. I teach CS First classes and I'm a team leader with 4-H, America's largest youth organization where kids learn by doing. Yeah. In this activity, you'll use code to, drum roll please, animate a name. Computer science uses code to give computers instructions, which is super cool because you can create anything you can imagine. Computer science is a subject you can study in school, and it's also a career or something you can do just for fun. You could use computer science to protect the environment, make music, launch rocket ships, save lives, and so much more. Today you'll use computer science concepts like sequencing, events, and loops to animate a name. To start, choose a word to animate. You could choose your name, a pet's name, an animal, a sport, a place, or anything you like. Your animation can express the emotion or personality of the word, tell a story, or just dance and be silly. It's all up to you!
After watching this video, click the Starter Project link. This will open Scratch in a new tab. Scratch uses code blocks to give characters called sprites instructions like when a sprite is clicked, make it change color. After opening Scratch, return to this tab and choose videos to learn how to add and animate letters to make your project come to life. Watch as many videos and add as many letters as you like. And here's a helpful trick. While you work, pause a video and go to the Scratch tab to complete a step in your project. Or better yet, rearrange your windows to show Scratch and a video at the same time.
Fiona, what did you make for your project? I animated the name of my 4-H club.
Wow! Well, I animated the name of my home country, Colombia.
Now it's your turn. Open Scratch in a new tab. Title your project with the name you're going to animate. Return to this tab and select the video. Watch the video and complete the steps in your project. Then watch more videos to complete your animation.
Time to get creative?
It's time to get coding.
All right, so a few quick things here, and then I'll actually answer a few questions we've had in the chat. So a couple quick things to note. There's also a transcript here. So if you click on that on any of the videos, you can get the full transcript of what was said. There are a few times when I've done animate a name or any of the CS First activities in a library or a school that had low bandwidth. And so with having all the kids run their videos at one time was just too much for the bandwidth. So we instead projected the videos up front and the kids worked individually. That's just a tip in case you should ever encounter that. But many places I haven't had that issue at all. But for some kids, it's easier for them to read through than it is to listen. Or if you're in a location like a school where they can see the video, but they don't have any access to sound, they can see and read and then go back and read through it later on. So that's really helpful.
Also, there's a link in the NYSD kit to where you can download the videos ahead of time if bandwidth is an issue.
Absolutely. So downloading them ahead of time, and if you're doing that, doing this offline instead of online, that's another helpful issue. So they will have those available for you. So a couple questions we've had so far. The URL that is the NYSD /pitch or at /NYSD Pitch isn't live yet. So if you type in for Pitch Your Passion, it will not open for another couple weeks. I think it'll be open sometime in early mid-August. That you can start practicing with that. In terms of the different example projects that we looked at, we just happened to look at example projects for which the kids wrote written narration between their characters, but there is also a video that tells kids on how they can actually talk into their computer microphones and record narration. So they can have one character speaking to another character in that way. So there's options for both of those. All right, so once you come here, so the kids have signed in, I always start with the introductory video. We usually watch that all together as a class. I will say for Animate a Name, that is the one and only ever time that they had a non-Googler in the video, Fiona, who's an actual 4-H'er from California, so that's really exciting. But the next thing the kids are gonna need to do after watching that introductory video is to click right here on Open Up the Starter Project. And when they do that, that's gonna open a new tab. And this is really important for the kids to understand that we are going to be toggling between two different tabs. One that has all the instructional videos and one that has the actual coding portion. As I mentioned in the introductory video, you could also open up two tabs and reposition them so they're side by side. Kids who know how to do that, I often let them go ahead, but many of the kids just go back and forth. It's really personal preference on how you'd like to do that. However, one important thing to note is once we get into Scratch, we now have to sign in again with that same username and password. And this is why it's incredibly important for those kids to write it down, and not only write it down correctly. So here you can see I've done this before, so some other codes are popping in here, but I'm gonna pop in my new code. And my password. And this is usually the most difficult, confusing part of this, is making sure kids do this right. They wrote it down right and they typed it in right, and that it actually signs them in. And once we get past this, and it doesn't take very long, a couple minutes, then the rest of it's really smooth sailing. So, and a lot of kids are like, oh yeah, I checked it twice and then they did it. And so we have to sometimes go back and get a new password, but that's usually pretty rare. So once they've done that, another important task, and it told us this at the very end of the video, to be able to save it in our work to go forward, we're gonna hit the remix button here. And then I think it's a good idea to save it in a new name. They don't have to, but they do have to hit the remix button in order to save it. So I'm just gonna call this Gen number 1. Okay, so I have my new project, and I'm gonna just show you a little bit about how this platform works and how we code something simple in it. Okay, so this big window right here, this is what I like to call the coding window. This is where we're gonna move all of our code in to make our different things. This is kind of, I like to tell kids that this is like the TV screen where we get to see what we've coded and created, and we can test our work as we go along. And over here to the side, these are all of our codes, and they're color coded here by what they do. So at the top, the bluish ones are motion, and then we get to looks, sound, events. You'll notice at the beginning, they didn't show us anything for motion yet, and that's because we don't have anything on the screen to move. So once we do that, those will pop out. And they also mentioned in the video that you know, some of the 3 important things they're going to be learning in this activity are events, sequencing, and loops. And I can actually show you what that means here as we code some different things. So to code something, we need to have something on the screen, and we call that a sprite. So we can choose a sprite, and it brings up a whole bunch of different options here on the different types of pictures that we can code. Since this was Animate a Name, I'm gonna go ahead and pick letters. So I'm gonna grab a W, and then I'm gonna go grab a V and a U. Okay, so we can see like right now they're all squished up all over top of each other. So all I have to do is grab them and move them around to get them where I'd like them to be. Okay, so again, this is my TV screen on what's been created. Down here, this is how I choose which letter I want to code. So right now, we can see U is highlighted, but if I want to code W, I'm going to click on it right here. And so that lets me know that anything I put in the center window is code for W. And it also shows it up here for us so we know what we're coding. Okay, so events, sequencing, and loops. So what do they mean by that? Well, sequence is just the order of our code. And the order of our code is really important because we probably wanted to do certain things at certain times. So if we don't follow the proper sequence we want, things are going to be all wonky and out of order. Events tell us when the code is going to do something or when something's going to happen. And events are really important. So I usually start with events for kids, and I click on the events, and there's a lot of different ways in which we can make our code start. And sometimes, like my daughter, she's 13, and she loves to use broadcasts. It's a slightly more advanced coding technique where something happens in the code and it broadcasts out and then something else changes. But to get started, the real easy things to do is these top 3 events. So the when flag clicked, and this is our flag here. It's kind of like the go or start button. They can choose the when blank key is pressed, and it can be the space or any number of other keys they can put in here, a lot like, you know, when you think about playing a video game. Or when the sprite is clicked, and that's if you physically click on the sprite, it would do that. So I'm going to go ahead and choose the when the green flag is clicked as my event. And I'm going to add a control that is a loop. A loop just means something that is repeated. So, and we can do different kinds of loops. I'm going to do one that's controlled by a specific number. So I'm going to make that 100. All right, so for this particular letter, W, I want to make it spin. And spin is within the motion tab. So I'm going to have it turn 15 degrees. And I'm going to have it turn 15 degrees 100 times. That's what a loop does, is it makes it do it more than once. In this case, I entered the number of 100. Now, the nice thing here, too, is I want my W to turn back to the way it should be at the very end, so that it's not upside down when it's done. So if I go down back here and add this at the very end of my loop, it'll always put the W in its proper orientation at the end. So we can go ahead and test this. And there you can see my W spinning, and it did it really quick, right? So 115 degrees spins, doesn't take long, and now it's back to its original orientation. If I wanted to do something to another letter, I would click on it. Now you can see kids are like, oh, wait a minute, where did my code go? My code disappeared? Well, this is the code for a different letter, and I could add the events for that. And for this one, I'll just do a real quick when clicked. We'll also use a loop. This time I'll use a forever loop, which means that it's not a number. It just keeps going and going until stopped. And this time, let's do a look. Let's change its color effect. So change color effect by 25. Okay, so now when I click my green flag, 2 letters are doing different things. And at the end, this is auto sharing or auto saving, but I always recommend that kids go in and click save now just to be safe. And now we know that our work is saved and we can move on to different things. If they want to stop it, and then this is what they're going to do. They're going to keep changing these things, and they're going to be watching videos. I've been going through and showing you this just to speed things up since we have limited time. Before I jump right back into the slides, I wanted to show you that kids can also change the backdrop. So they can have different kinds of scenes that they apply here. So here I can put my WVU in the Arctic, or I can do other things. They can also code the scenes as well and have different scenes do things, just like we saw in the example project with the bear. All right. So again, looking at some of the code that we were just looking at there, I showed you a simple rotation. how we can change color. And had I gone on, I made a more complicated one earlier on where I actually made my U both make word bubbles and sound at the same time. So this is what we call a nested loop, in that I have a forever loop with a repeat loop with the inside of it. So here I can show you really quickly what that finished product looks like here. And I want to tell you that meow sound is something you're going to hear a lot as you do Scratch. That's the first sound that the kids find. And once they learn sound, they don't want to do anything else. And then your room will be a cacophony of noise, but it's all good noise because the kids are laughing and giggling and playing around together. There's also options for them to record their own voice and make their own sounds, as well as augment sounds. All right, so before we jump into resources, I want to bring back the CS First website again. Okay, so as I mentioned, I just jumped into the coding and I was showing you a lot of what can be done here and some options within the Scratch system. But you really want to make sure the kids are toggling back and forth between these two tabs. And so I get a lot of kids who, just like me, just want to jump in and they want to start coding. They don't want to come back here, and then they get stuck and like, how do we do this? And I'm like, well, let's go back to this tab. Hey, you want to make it spin? Look, there's a whole video that teaches you how to do that. You want to draw your own thing? There's a video for that too. So all of these are down here for the kids to be able to do. And our Pitch Your Passion is going to have the same thing, as well as, you know, some new ones that weren't included in Animate a Name last year. This next button that they click on here, that doesn't take them to new videos, that actually takes them to a built-in survey. We do hope you do that if you go through the activity with kids, but I would urge the kids to move on to that after they've finished their project rather than in between. All right, so let's just pause for a minute. Now that we've talked about how CS First and Scratch worked, are there any questions that you might have? You can either write them into the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and ask it directly.
So we'll go ahead and answer this question. Scratch is available for anybody to use. Do you know the URL? Is it?
So Scratch, it's just, if we look over here, if I pull it back up. Oh, we're in it right here. It's just scratch.mit.edu. And if you Google Scratch MIT, or actually usually just Scratch by itself will bring it up, but certainly Scratch or Code or Scratch or MIT, it'll be the first link that is open to you. But yeah, it's just scratch.mit.edu. It's absolutely free. It's available to anybody. Anybody can set up their own account. What's really great about using the CS First platform is otherwise you have to have an email address. And they really wanted to have a way to protect kids' anonymity. So by creating class codes and going through the way I did to create a username and password, we don't have to share any personal information or email address that the kids could later connect back to a person. What's also really nice about Scratch is it really is a community. There's celebrity scratchers. My daughter loves to go on and look at other people's work, and that's what the remix button is all about. You find another person's work and you hit remix, you learn from their work, you augment and create and make your own. So it's a really wonderful learning community. They also have some great things for teachers in there, and you can see what other teachers are doing. So it's a really wonderful platform. What I think CS First has done is made it far easier for people without any experience to be able to do. In fact, let's go into it that way. I'm going to go ahead and sign out as a student. And I'm going to sign in as an educator. So I've already created an account, and anyone can do this again for free within CS First. So I'm going to go in as a teacher. And my system's already set up.
And so you can just use any Google account for this. So if you already have a Google account, or if your school or workplace issues you one, you can just use that and not have to set anything up.
Yeah, and if not, you can create a free Gmail account to create one. Okay, so here are some of the classes I've already created and signed in the past. So this is the one, you can see I had 3 students. What I think is really great about creating up these class codes, not only do the kids get to create free usernames and passwords, but I get to keep a count of how many kids I worked with. So I'll give you an example. There are some times when I do this, I did this as an hour of code event in December that was a 4-hour event where I had people coming in and out of my room. We had the class code written on the board, and people spent their own time coming in and out and creating accounts and then leaving from there. I really had no idea how many people I had worked with until when I went home later that night and entered back into this dashboard, and I could see that we reached, that one's not up here, it's on a different account, so I think I had reached 56 people that day. So that was wonderful for me. That's something I could report back for work, that I had reached 56 people at this hour of code. Another time, I like to set up a different one for each event that I'm running. So it was our National Youth Science Day at a middle school, and the teacher just told me, well, we're going to run it through all of our classes, and she had 7 periods, but I didn't get a chance to ask her how many kids would be there. Throughout the entire day, I had 136 kids. So again, it was all recorded within my class codes. So I didn't have to sit there with a clicker, write down notches. So that's also very helpful for us. Once you've created your own username within this as a teacher account, to create a class, all we have to do is click this button right here. And then you decide what the class name is. So I can call it NYSD Practice. You can even pick different colors if you want to. All right, and so right now it tells me 0 of 0. Well, that lets me know who's physically signed in at the moment, but the second one tells you how many people have signed in together. But I don't have any activities assigned yet. So to assign an activity, I'm going to go down here. And I'm going to add one of CS First's various activities. All right, so there are a lot of different things that we can do, and we will see eventually Pitch Your Passion will be among one of these sample activities. So Animate a Name was our National Youth Science Day activity last year. An Unusual Discovery was something that they added for Computer Science Education Week last December. They're constantly adding on to these. Create Your Own Google Logo is another fun one. So all I have to do is click Add to Class. And here I'm going to pick the one I just made, NYSD Practice. Add that to my class. So let's view the class. And now you can see that it's there. And what's great about making sure this is within your class is that once you've created it and the kids are going to go through right here, you can see this is the class code. So you're going to write this on the board or have it handy on a handout for kids as they walk in the room. And if they create their accounts, they're going to put in that 3PTZRF. Every time you create your own class, you're going to have a unique class code that you're going to be using there. So you want to make sure that it's yours and not somebody else's if you want to retain this data to use later in your reporting. So we can also see a lot of other things within this. So if we click here, it'll show us what the actual activity looks like and all of the various resources that CS First makes available. So they have lesson plans, informational flyers, certificates, badges, student rosters, all kinds of things that you can have available. Here you can see you can download all of the English or Spanish videos to have ahead of time if you need to. It also has where you could jump straight into the activity itself. And so this is what the kids will see. So once the kids type in their code, create their unique username and password, and click on it, it's going to offer this. So that way you don't have one kid off on one thing and another on another, and then they open it up and they can see that same platform that we had. Of course, for ours, for NYSD, it's going to be Pitch Your Passion, and it's going to have all the various videos that are connected to it. All right, if we go back to the curriculum, and I just want to show this briefly, again, because it's not really connected to NYSD, but let's say, you know, you do this throughout October and you had a lot of fun with it and you want to go on and do more. Maybe you're a 4-H club leader who wants to do this, you know, as an additional coding club for your group. They also have complete thematic units that follow along, and kids build in coding complexity throughout an 8-sequence lesson plan. So for instance, storytelling, if we view that, storytelling has 10 unique classes, all about an hour long, that you could go through where the kids learn different things and different activities. So here's activity 1, learning about dialogue. Activity 2, check it out, setting, premise, characterization. Activity, 8, there are 8 activities. And so this is about 8 to 10 hours, because they put it between 60 to an hour and a half, depending on how much time you have, that you would meet through the kids over these 8 times. Sometimes it's once a week, sometimes it's once a month. We've had our agents do it in different ways, but it's a nice way that once you've built up your skills with a one-time activity like animate a name or pitch your passion, you can go on and do something even more robust. For our agents, many of them have started this with teachers or librarians, and then the librarians halfway through took it over and taught the remainder of the class. Finally, I want to show you that if you do opt for this method here, for the complete themes, they do offer free materials. Again, this is separate from NYSD, but if we go here, I think they show you a picture of it down here. Yeah, so you can get a free classroom kit, and the little box has a lot of great information and materials you can share with the youth. All right, so given that we only have about 10 minutes left, I want to show you some quick resources here that are available both within the kit as well as CS First. So what's in the Game Changers kit? You're going to get a facilitator guide, 10 youth workbooks, the scratch coding cards that we showed you, as well as all the materials you need to run the unplugged activities, the game board, dry erase markers, tractor pieces, and so forth. You're also going to get a USB drive, and it's going to have the offline version of Scratch that you can download, as well as your Pitch Your Passion offline instructions. So those are more, if you look at the facilitator guide, it tells you what to do for online. If you're going to do this offline, you want to open up the USB and really follow those detailed step-by-step offline instructions to help you run that class, as well as printable versions of all the other printed materials within the kit. The facilitator guide, just like CS First, is there to help step-by-step get you through this process. It provides everything you need to know to facilitate these 3 activities. And so if you take it out the night before and try some things and then bring it along with you the day of class, it's really going to help prepare you to do these activities, including discussion points, prompting questions, and reflection questions. We also included pillar tie-ins for all of the activities, and so those are all noted on the icon key. If you don't feel comfortable winging it, there's read aloud sections, so you can just follow along with the script. And make sure you check out all of those facilitator tips that are within the facilitator guide, because we play tested all of these activities with many kids, and so we've thrown in all the tips that we thought were important to help us through the projects. So there's also Pitch Your Passion Code Solution Guide. I'm going to show that to you in just a second. If you have kids that are super curious and want to take it further, there's some activity suggestions for that. educational standards that you can correlate if you're going into a school or if you're required to report your educational standards. They're all on the last page, as well as a list of resources and suggestions if you want to continue computer science beyond NYSD and into Computer Science Education Week in December. The add-on solution guide, again, within the facilitator guide, if you have a kid who's really, really stuck, you can follow the solution guide to provide them some suggestions on how their code could go for that particular add-on or video. So remember, these are just suggestions because every single kid's activity should be unique and they're all doing something slightly different. Again, most of the time I have one child help another child, and that usually tends to resolve itself, but I have found that these solution guides are really helpful. We also have the youth book workbook, and I think that's going to be really pivotal this year. So there'll be 10 in the kit, but there's also, you can print it out on your own. On the table of contents right there is a place for them to write down their username and password. If you don't plan on having the kids work through the youth workbook, make sure you have paper for them to do that. However, the workbook is going to be really helpful and needed for the part 2, the public service announcement. There's a lot of step-by-step instructions for that, as well as for the unplugged activities. So for Program Your Playground and Hack Your Harvest, there are things within the youth guides that will help them get through their activities and it'll make your work a lot easier. Lastly, what we've included this year for the first time on the very end of the workbook are the 4-H Game Changers, and these are 3 stories of real 4-H youth who are changing their communities through computer science, and each of the story has a 4-H pillar connection. I think that this is really important, and it was something that I really wanted included this year because I think it's going to change perceptions in 2 ways. One, we're going to have our own 4-H youth seeing others using computer science in real ways, and a lot of these kids, there's some great minority examples here and underserved youth examples, so I want them to be able to see themselves in these stories. But also, we know that we share these activities with many people who don't know 4-H, so we also want to change the perception of what we do as an organization. Again, remember, there are printable versions of this available on the flash drive to make this kit highly reusable. That was really important to us. Lastly, I want to share some helpful links within that I think will really help you here. We are going to send this out as our archived webinar afterwards with these links, but you can click right into CS First and start programming today. There are some great step-by-step videos for first-time educators within this one here, the CS First. I know that's a long URL. They've kind of hidden those videos, so I'll make sure that you get that in our follow-up email, as well as their help community and their quick start guide. So if you get stuck, CS First has a lot of things to help you through this.